Pokemon game using only one Pokemon is not a new concept. But Legends ZA is very different. This game has a completely new battling system along with new mechanics that make it harder than ever to avoid taking damage. So this made me wonder, with all these new changes, would it be possible to beat Legends ZA using only your unevolved starter Pokemon? Well, that's exactly what I tried to do. Here's how it went. The game begins with us arriving in Lumio City, and immediately we're presented with possibly the most important decision of the entire challenge. Which starter do we choose? Whoever we take will be the only Pokemon we can battle with for this entire game. So we need to choose our hero carefully. Let me know who you would choose for a solo run in the comments below. Chikorita is an interesting choice since it's the only one that has access to recovery. And in the case of Tepig, it's a solid fire type that hits hard. But for this challenge, I'm leaning towards Totodile. As a water type, Totodile only has 2 weaknesses. There are also a few other reasons why I chose this little guy, but I'll talk about those a little later. So, with our starter now chosen, and the other 2 left firmly in the trash, for now, we begin moving through the long tutorial and slowly work our way through the early part of the game. Alright Keegan, it's time for you to learn how to catch a Pokemon. Nah. I'm good, thanks. What do you mean? This is Pokemon. You know, gotta catch 'em all? Look, I've already got my goofy looking Totodile here. What more could I possibly need? In this challenge, there's really only one main rule. I'm only allowed to enter each battle with just my starter. Also, to keep Totodile cute and powerless, it's never allowed to evolve. And on top of that, I'm also not allowed to use any potions or healing items from the bag during a battle. While this game does require me to catch some Pokemon as part of mandatory quests, as well as to unlock certain TMs through research tasks, that's all fine as long as I only use our starter in battle. In short, we can only ever use our Totodile and can't use any potions during battle. I fear we might be in trouble here. So, with the rules and tutorial out of the way, now we can actually begin our challenge. The first real fight of the game is our opening promotion match against Zach. In the good old days, you could march into the first gym with your water-type starter, decimate everything instantly, and easily walk away with badge number 1. But this game is different. To earn rank Y, we have to beat Zach and his team of 3 Pokemon, including a Pikachu that is incredibly deadly for Totodile, especially this early on in the game. Despite the fact that I wasn't feeling too confident about our chances here, with only our level 10 Totodile and a pretty average moveset, I still wanted to try this fight and see just how close we can get. And the start of this battle is actually pretty smooth. Thanks to our Totodile already knowing the move Bite, we can hit Slowpoke for super effective damage. Thankfully, 2 of these are enough to take it down pretty quickly. Then, against the Pidgey that comes in next, we continue trading hits before Totodile picks up its second KO with Tackle while still at pretty reasonable health. This leaves Zach with only his final Pokemon, Pikachu. This thing is obviously a massive threat. It's a strong electric type that also knows Thundershock, which means that our Totodile is severely outmatched and in a lot of danger here. And I was honestly expecting this to result in our first loss. Except, that's not what happened. After Totodile is hit by a Thunder Wave, Pikachu then charges up a Thundershock. But Totodile's Bite lands first, which also causes Pikachu to flinch. As a result, we completely avoid a Thundershock that probably would have KO'd Totodile, after which a Tackle, followed by a Water Gun, are all we need to finish off Pikachu. With that, our Totodile had somehow beaten Zach in a 1v3 on the very first try. Apparently, that's Zach's 100th loss. If you're getting slapped around by just a Totodile, I think it's time to retire, my guy. That night, Team MZ all gathered together to celebrate the heroics of my adopted derpy son. Beating Zach on the first try was definitely a surprise, but it's also a big relief, as that was our ticket to powering up Totodile. As, after beating Zach, the map fully opens up, and this gives us the chance to hunt down some extra TMs. This allows us to get some really useful moves on Totodile, like Brick Break, Flip Turn, Dig, and Ice Fang, giving us some stronger moves, as well as some much needed type coverage. But despite these upgrades, it wouldn't be long before we suffered our first loss. One of the mandatory early game quests in this game has us battle against an Alpha Bunnelby. Even though we have the level advantage, this Bunnelby knows Earth Power, which deals massive damage. Our Brick Break and Flip Turn still aren't enough to overpower it, as a third Earth Power quickly buries Totodile, giving us our first loss, and it came against a wild bunny. I don't feel so good about our chances anymore. That loss highlights just how important it is for us to know the move Protect. With the Legends EA battle system, being faster and stronger doesn't let you completely avoid damage. There's a lot more trading hits, which is why having Protect to help dodge powerful attacks is so important. After adding this into Totodile's moveset, our second attempt goes much better. Protect works perfectly, nullifying the first Earth Power, and ultimately, this allows Totodile to survive long enough to overpower the Alpha Bunnelby with Brick Break and Flip Turn. So, with that behind us, now that our Totodile has an upgraded moveset, we turn our attention towards our next rank up. This one's another 1v3, and we're only a few levels higher than our opponent. Unlike the fight against Zack, Yvonne's Pokemon hit much harder. As a result, despite gradually working our way through Spritzy and Swirlix, we just fall short against her ace, the fully evolved Vivillon, meaning that, once again, we had lost. When looking at Totodile's stats, our physical defense is a lot higher than our special defense, which explains why Yvonne's special attacking fairies pose much more of a threat than Zack's team did. Regardless, that fight was still pretty close, so I didn't change much other than giving Totodile a Citrus Berry before returning for attempt 2. This time, things go a lot smoother. The start of the fight is still largely the same, with Bubble Beams and Flip Turns gradually wearing through Spritzy and Swirlix. But this time, thanks to our Citrus Berry activating, this means that Totodile is still at decent health by the time Vivillon hits the field. Ice Fang and Flip Turn both hit Vivillon hard, putting it on the brink of death. And with one final Ice Fang, Totodile had soloed yet another promotion match, taking us to rank X. We're still very much in the early game, but things would only continue to get harder for our solo little Totodile. For example, the next promotion match against Chabby sees us take on our first 4v1. Being this far outnumbered makes things incredibly difficult. On top of that, his Roselia will literally just one-shot our Totodile if we get hit by even a single magical leaf. As such, I did brutally lose twice while struggling my way through this fight. Although, on my third attempt, I was able to figure out a decent method. This time, I was able to quickly take out Roselia with an Ice Fang, followed by a Brick Break, allowing us to avoid having to tank any grass moves. The Kadabra that then comes in next instantly sets up Reflect, so after an Ice Fang, we hit it with Brick Break to remove Reflect while also taking Kadabra down. This leaves Chavy with only his very menacing Furfro. Thankfully, Totodile can just survive a takedown, hanging on within an inch of its life. After that, one last dig is able to finish it off, giving us our first 1v4 win to earn rank W. So we were making decent progress. And after that, we do pick up some semblance of momentum, as our next promotion match is much more straightforward. Against Rintaro and his 3 evolved elemental monkeys, the only real threat here is the lead Simisage. However, by using Protect as well as Dig to help avoid its grass type attacks, we're ultimately able to take it down with the help of Ice Fang. The rest of Rintaro's team thankfully isn't much of a threat, as Totodile can quickly clean up the remaining monkeys, giving us an impressive win on our first attempt, as well as a promotion to rank V. So our momentum was running high, and despite a few losses, that first section of the game was relatively smooth. But this is where the good times end, because from this point on, the game starts to become much harder, and our Totodile begins the slow, painful descent into Legend ZA hell. This all starts after obtaining our Mega Bracelet and fighting against the Rogue Mega Absol, because the next morning, we have to fight Tawny. Her team here is absolutely absurd, featuring a Bayleaf as well as a Mega Manectric. This is the worst combination possible for our Totodile, who stands no chance here whatsoever. As a result, I can only watch on in horror as Totodile has its entire soul sucked out of it by a single Giga Drain. This could honestly end the entire run, if not for the fact that winning this fight is not actually mandatory. Don't worry, Keegan, you did pretty well considering it was your first time battling a Mega Evolution. Tawny, I think you just killed my Totodile. Seriously, he hasn't moved in minutes. Despite the game taking pity on us and not forcing Totodile to win that fight, it does show just how difficult this game is going to get, and fast. Basically, from this point on, almost every fight is against 4 or more strong Pokemon, including a deadly Mega, all while we only have our one singular derpy Crocodile. And it wouldn't take long for us to find this sharp spike in difficulty, as for our next fight, we have to take on Vinny. Beating him will take our Totodile all the way to rank F. But to do it, we've got to go through a stacked roster that also happens to include an incredibly deadly Mega Drampa. Unlike that last fight against Tawny, this is one that we actually have to beat, making it Totodile's toughest hurdle yet. With that said, Vinny's team does have some weaknesses that Totodile can exploit. So, as Totodile's strongest soldier and #1 fan, I decided to see just how well our little Croc could do in this 1v4. And this went about as well as you'd expect. The fight starts out pretty smooth, as Totodile has a good matchup into Houndoom, dishing out big damage with Brick Break and Flip Turn, so we're able to take it down mostly unscathed. Although, the Sharpedo that comes in next is a little more deadly. Its Whirlpool deals big chip damage, and a critical hit slash also puts me below half health by the time we KO the Shark. The Baneri that follows is surprisingly bulky, but super effective Brick Breaks are still able to finish it off. But by now, Totodile is on the brink of death. After slugging its way through 3 strong Pokemon, we still have to contend with Drampa, Vinny's ace, who then Mega Evolves. This thing is the real threat. It's far stronger than anything we've come up against so far. Even our super effective Brick Break barely leaves a dent in this thing. And very quickly, Totodile is finished off by Twister, handing us a very comprehensive loss. Following that beatdown, I then tried pumping all of my EXP candy into Totodile and slightly adjusting its moveset. These changes do help a little bit, especially with Aqua Jet allowing me to dodge the residual damage from Fire Spin and Whirlpool. But ultimately, the result of this fight is the exact same. Once Mega Drampa hits the field, our Totodile just stands no chance. Even our super effective Brick Break and Ice Fang barely do any damage to Drampa. Totodile just gets eviscerated by Twister, giving us yet another brutal beatdown. Obviously, those 2 fights weren't even close, making Vinny our first serious roadblock of the challenge. Beating this fight was going to take much more than just a minor change. So first, I decided to try and find some better held items. Citrus berries have been helpful so far, but I wanted to see if there were any better options available. And there are actually some really interesting held items that you can get in this game. We just haven't unlocked them yet. Pretty much any useful held item that you can think of is most likely locked behind a side quest that you can't access until later on in the game. So there's not a lot that we can do with our moveset, and getting a better held item isn't really on the table, which means our only realistic option is leveling up. Grinding XP is a necessary evil here. As we start to face stronger and stronger opponents, we'll have to start relying on leveling to try and overcome our pretty poor stats. Thankfully, there are a few ways to help us level up quickly. First, by running all over the city and climbing these scaffolds, we can find colored screws, which can then be traded in for red canary plushies. These are basically like EXP charms that boost our EXP rate. On top of that, we're also able to find rare candies and EXP candies all across the city, as well as being given bonus candies for completing some of Mabel's research tasks. Between scavenging items and hunting wild Pokemon, I ended up spending several hours grinding away. Seriously, I think Totodile decimated the entire population of ground types inside Wild Zone 8. After that grinding session, I then took all of my EXP candies and force-fed them to our cute little Totodile. After stuffing its face with candies and performance-enhancing vitamins, our starter had grown all the way to level 47, meaning that now we were in possession of the buffest, strongest Totodile to ever grace Lumiose City. And so, with our upgraded starter, I once again returned to Vinny, ready for a rematch. And this time, things go very differently. Previously, we were two-shotting Vinny's first few Pokemon, which left us open to taking a lot of damage. But now, our Totodile is much stronger. This allows us to quickly kill Houndoom with a single flip turn, before Sharpedo also suffers the same fate at the hands of Brick Break. The Baneri that comes in after that is also handled pretty quickly, meaning that Totodile was still very healthy by the time Mega Drampa re-emerges once again. This thing is still a monster though. Our Brick Breaks still aren't dealing crazy damage, but it is an improvement over last time, as an Icy Wind then brings Drampa below half health. Our Totodile does get paralyzed and drops below half health, but after our Citrus Berry activates, one more Brick Break, followed by a final Ice Fang, are all we need to finish Drampa this time around. With that, our single Totodile had slayed the deadly Drampa, earning us another 1v4 win, as well as a big promotion, all the way to rank F. Keegan, with strength like that, we could really use your help in handling these rogue megas. Sir? I only have one Totodile. What do you expect me to do? Despite being armed with only Totodile, we still get conscripted into fighting the rogue megas, which seems especially cruel when Team MZ decides to send me to fight all three of them. After AZ then hands us a very useless Feraligatr Megastone, we then have to set out to try and deal with these rogues. Taking them down is not impossible. It's just really slow. I have to play so carefully, since if Totodile faints, we lose. Despite Totodile not being able to Mega Evolve, we can still use plus moves to deal some kind of damage. There's a lot of running around to dodge attacks, but ultimately, our starter is able to gradually work its way through Mega Slowbro, and the Mega Camerupt after that is also very smooth thanks to our strong type matchup. Although, against Victory Bell, it's a very different story. We quickly get hit by two Grass-type moves that immediately drop Totodile to low health. This means that I can't take any more hits and have to resort to my backup plan, being a coward. By simply dodging attacks, we can just focus on surviving while Naveen takes care of this all by himself. Keegan, a little help? Nah, you got this, Naveen. I'll just be right here running laps. By no means is this an honorable or a fun way of dealing with these rogue megas, but it is effective and pretty much my only choice here. The problem is, this is so slow. Seriously, I spent the next 40 minutes dodging attacks. I don't know why Naveen is so weak, but I just have to sit here and watch, waiting for the Mega Victory Bell to go down. Once it gets down to 1 HP, the rogues will start enduring hits. This means that we have to land the last attack. So, after finding an opening, Totodile lands one final liquidation, ending my suffering after a ridiculously long fight. That was a pretty dishonorable win, but it is a win nonetheless. So, recently, we've managed to beat a 1v4 against a Mega user, as well as now have a method for dealing with rogue Megas. So, you might be thinking that things would start to get easier from here. Wrong, wrong, wrong. Our suffering had barely even begun, as next, we're faced by Canary, the trainer who scares me the most in this entire challenge. Canary specializes in electric types, which is an awful matchup for Totodile. Her team features 4 electric types, including a Mega Electros that is just so ridiculously strong against us. I already knew that this was going to be painful, as we were effectively sending our heroic little Totodile straight to the electric chair. The only thing that we have going for us here is that Totodile can learn 2 ground moves in Dig and Bulldoze. Regardless, despite feeling very hopeless about our chances, with my Totodile in tow, we marched right into the construction building before stepping forward to take on the electric-type demon. And this went about as awful as you'd expect. Look, I got destroyed. On my first 2 attempts, I just relied on Dig and Bulldoze to try and overwhelm Canary with big damage. This works on the lead Heliolisk, who falls to a single Dig. However, Ampharos comes in and immediately boosts its defense with Cotton Guard. As a result, Totodile just can't deal enough damage before getting completely fried by Discharge. On the second attempt, I was able to just scrape by Ampharos, but ultimately fell to Stunfisk soon afterwards. After those 2 losses, it was clear that I needed to try and change my approach. So, over the next hour, I then went on to try a bunch of things, like subbing in Swords Dance to boost my attack, using a Wakan Berry to try and soak up 1 electric attack, and even using a Nature Mint to give Totodile an adamant nature. Despite all of these efforts, I was just getting destroyed, time and time again. This was starting to feel completely hopeless. Our Totodile had never been beaten this badly. Although, as our losses continued piling up, I started to find patterns in Canary's moves. Most of our fights would play out with a similar sequence, and I started to wonder if I could take advantage of this. I still continued losing a lot, but I started to develop some semblance of a strategy, ultimately bringing us to Attempt 13. My plan goes like this. Against Heliolisk, get within range to bait out a bulldoze, then quickly run back out of range to dodge. After that, use dig to dodge the incoming Volt Switch before finishing Heliolisk in one shot. Then, against Ampharos, use a quick liquidation while it goes for Cotton Guard, then quickly run back out of range from Discharge. Quickly use dig to avoid the Dragon Pulse before finishing Ampharos once the attack connects. The Stun Fisk that comes in next always starts with charge, so we hit a quick bulldoze before running backwards to avoid the incoming Discharge. Then, just like against Ampharos, use dig to dodge the incoming attack, which is also enough to take down Stunfisk. So, this brings us to Canary's final Pokemon, Mega Electros. This thing is insanely tough. But thanks to my fine-tuned plan, I still have all of my health, as well as a Wakan Berry up my sleeve. Thanks to that, our berry saves us from instant death by Discharge, before Totodile digs underground just before Volt Switch connects. This does big damage once it lands, and after Totodile thankfully tanks a crunch, we land one last super effective bulldoze to crush Electros, giving us an absolutely insane win. Somehow, one single Totodile had just conquered a team of 4 fully evolved electric types, earning a highly deserved promotion as Totodile reaches rank E. Part of me didn't expect that fight to even be possible, but the strongest Totodile of all time was still hanging on. Congratulations on the promotion, Keegan, but your Totodile doesn't look so good. Is he okay? He's fine. Probably. With Canary defeated, you might be wondering who our next deadly opponent is going to be. Canary. Again. This next section of the game is the long road to Ivore. First, this involves taking on another round of Rogue Megas, which Totodile was eventually able to clear without too many issues. After that, we then have to begin the long quest of tracking down Ivore's missing sister, and as part of that, we have to rematch against Canary, even though we literally just fought her. Canary's team is even stronger now, and to make things worse, now her Electros even knows Giga Drain, which is really annoying. I did rack up 3 more losses while trying to take her down, but by attempt 4, this fight ultimately goes pretty similar to last time. By using Dig and Bulldoze, combined with the fact that Totodile could just tank a Giga Drain, we were thankfully able to beat Canary's Mega Electros once again. But gee, I sure hope we don't have to fight Canary for a 3rd time at some point during this game. Ultimately, after Totodile uses Ice Beam on the Clawitzer Fountain, we can enter the Lumio City sewers, where we eventually find Gwyn hiding out. We do have to battle her, but this is a pretty simple fight for Totodile, who can pick up the win cleanly on our first attempt. This all clears us to take on our next promotion match against Ivore, and this fight is an interesting one. Against Canary, both of us had super effective moves that could damage the other, but in the case of Ivore, neither of us have any type advantage whatsoever. And since Ivore's team is so bulky, this makes the fight longer, which also increases the amount of hits that Totodile is likely to take. This makes Ivore just as deadly as Canary. Since we don't have any moves that can quickly KO his Pokemon, we would instead have to rely on some more creative strategies. So, after equipping Totodile with some of our strongest moves, we stepped up to take on the leader of the Fist of Justice, Ivore. And once again, this went pretty terribly. By simply trying to spam Liquidation and Aqua Jet, we are able to gradually wear through Ivore's Heracross and Medicham. However, each of these take multiple hits to KO, meaning that we take a lot of damage in the process. As a result, once Machamp hits the field, we just don't have enough gas left in the tank, as Brick Break smacks our Totodile into its grave, giving us our first loss against Ivore. On subsequent attempts, I was able able to make it further, even overcoming Machamp and reaching Ivore's phalanx. But once this thing Mega Evolves, it's just so hard to kill. Even our strongest move, Liquidation, barely does any damage before Totodile is quickly finished off. Once again, we were firmly in the depths of hell as Totodile was being crushed. Again, and again. This was starting to look incredibly bleak. That is, until attempt 7. Against Heracross, we do take a lot of chip damage from a Brick Break and Pin Missile, but Totodile can get the KO with a Liquidation, followed by Aqua Jet. Then, against Metacham, this guy always waits to use Protect, which we can use to our advantage, because by using Aqua Jet, we land our attack before Protect goes up, before then using Flip Turn, which allows Totodile to retreat and dodge the incoming Zen Headbutt. Importantly, this buys us a little time to use Swords Dance, giving us an attack boost before finishing Metacham with Aqua Jet. This sets us up nicely for the incoming Machamp. It does use Bulk Up, but on this attempt, Totodile actually manages to land a critical hit Liquidation, knocking out Machamp instantly. Thanks to that luck, now Ivore was down to only his Phalanx, with Totodile in better shape than any of our previous attempts. As Phalanx uses no retreat to boost all of its stats, we hit it with Liquidation. This does less than half. I try to hit a Flip Turn, but get caught by Brick Break, which puts Totodile at low health and uses our Citrus Berry. Now we're only one hit away from death. However, as Phalanx uses Rock Slide, Totodile Aqua Jets to dart forward and dodge the attack. We then have a small window to land one last Liquidation, finishing off Phalanx just in time. With that, Totodile had soloed yet another promotion match, giving us the win and bestowing our little crocodile with rank D. Despite having suffered a ridiculous number of losses along the way, our Totodile had now managed to win 4v1s against a variety of teams with different styles and type matchups. From here, things do not get easier. Although, for the rest of the mid-game, our challenge would follow the same trajectory as those last few fights. I would still lose quite a lot, but eventually find a way to make it through these battles, either through skill or just sheer luck. For example, when taking on Corbeau, after losing 6 times in a row, it was only by freezing his annoying Gyarados with Ice Fang that I was able to pull out the win on attempt number 7. So, despite my struggles, I was making relatively smooth progress. Although, I did get stuck in a fight against a Rogue Mega Venusaur for over 45 minutes. This was even worse than the Victory Bell fight, since Venusaur has the ability to recover its health, making it so painfully slow. Regardless, after slowly making our way through LeBon's Dragons, we then have to take part in Jacynth's tournament, rematching against our last opponents, each packing even stronger teams than last time. I may have suffered another 12 losses during these rematches, but since their teams are still fundamentally the same, I was able to use pretty similar strategies to our previous battles. After those fights had been cleared, and Totodile had packed up Zygarde in a 1v1 beatdown, we had arrived at the next difficulty spike in Pokémon Legends ZA, Jacynth. Up until now, at worst, we've only had to battle teams of 4 Pokemon. While I have eventually been able to win these fights, our successful attempts have been so close, often winning with Totodile being at very low health and only fractions of a second away from death. This means that adding an extra Pokemon onto our opponent's team makes things so much harder. And by this point of the game, all of our opponent's Pokemon are fully evolved and insanely strong. While Totodile does have a pretty healthy level advantage, our starter is still completely outmatched by Jacynth and her menacing team of 5. Despite this feeling of impending doom, Totodile had somehow overcome some insanely hard fights already. So after equipping my strongest set of moves, I prepared to face our first 1v5 to try and earn rank B. My plan here is full-on aggression. Against the lead Carbink, I immediately use Swords Dance for an attack boost. Then, after barely dodging the incoming Moonblast, we then get a quick KO with Aqua Jet, followed by Liquidation. Jacynth then sends in her second and final Rock type, who we're able to take down almost instantly with super effective damage. So, now the fight was down to a 3-on-1, with Totodile still near full health. Although, none of Jacynth's remaining Pokemon are weak to water, making this much more difficult. Against the incoming Mawile, I try to dodge a Play Rough, but still get caught. And while reusing Swords Dance, we also also get hit by Crunch. Our boosted liquidation just isn't enough to KO, allowing Mawile to land an Iron Head before Aqua Jet ultimately takes it down. This is then followed by Gardevoir, who makes the mistake of trying to set up with Calm Mind. This gives us the window to hit 2 quick attacks, which are enough to take down the frail Fairy type. All of a sudden, Jacinthe was down to only her final Pokemon, Mega Clefable. This thing is far stronger and much more threatening than the rest of Jacinthe's team. Our Aqua Jet is faster than Protect, which then allows us to use Flip Turn to continue chipping at Clefable, while also allowing Totodile to dodge the incoming Mystical Fire. I then use this opportunity to set up a Swords Dance, but Totodile gets hit by a Moonblast that instantly puts us on the brink of death. I have to try and end this fight now. So Totodile darts forward with an Aqua Jet before both Totodile and Clefable charge up their final attacks at the exact same time, and Totodile wins! Our liquidation just landed first, taking down Clefable and giving us an insane win over Jacinthe on the very first attempt. I was honestly shocked. While it wasn't a bad matchup for us, Totodile had still just beaten a 1v5 all by itself. Our Derpy son had really come a long way since losing to a Bunnelby right at the beginning of the challenge. But now, we were proving our power with Totodile reaching rank B. Our momentum was running high, and this was set to continue, at least for a little while longer. Next, we have our final round of Rogue Megas, which thankfully doesn't feature any annoying grass types. Ultimately, these rogues are pretty easy for Totodile to handle, as we don't really have any bad matchups here. So, before long, we'd claimed 3 more rogue victories. During this time, we also have another rematch with Philippe and his steel types. It's another 4v1, which actually ends up being really close. Although, since 2 of his steel types are also rock types, this gives Totodile a pretty big edge against Steelix and Aggron. So, after just hanging on long enough against Mega Skarmory, we'd embarrassed Philippe once again. With those rogue Megas now handled, it's here that we're alerted about our next promotion match, whereby to reach rank A, we'll have to face Grisham. This is the opponent who scares me the most in this entire game, but we'll talk about him a little later. During the quest to track down Grisham, we have to chase leads with both Emma and Mabel, and as part of this, we also have to battle Emma. On paper, her team is insanely strong. It's another 1v5 featuring big threats like Ampharos, Lucario, and a Mega Malamar. I knew this was going to be tough, but having just beaten Jacinthe, I was feeling pretty confident about our chances. So Totodile hits the field and instantly gets decimated by Thunder, losing in brutal fashion. Based on how that first attempt went, this looks pretty grim. However, on the second attempt, things do go much smoother. This time, by using Aqua Jet first and then immediately following up with Dig, we can avoid the incoming Thunder before Ampharos is buried into the dirt. The Larpity that comes in next isn't really overly threatening with its physical attacks, allowing Totodile to take it down with Dig and Liquidation. Emma's Mawile and Lucario are both weak to ground moves, which works really well in our favor, as Totodile ends up ripping through them with both Dig and Bulldoze. This leaves only the final Mega Malamar, who is much more of a threat. It hits hard, but it's also pretty frail. So, with the help of our Citrus Berry, Totodile can survive long enough to land a Liquidation and a Dig, which ultimately finishes the squid once and for all. So, that attempt was much smoother than the first, as we'd now won yet another 5v1. And beating Emma is a big milestone in our challenge, as it's at this point that we unlock Side Mission 100. The quest is given by this woman, who I'm pretty sure has been sniffing too much Stardust. She starts spitting out nonsense about me beaming thoughts into her brain, and something about a Starmie gathering. Eventually, she asks us to come and see her at night while carrying a Starmie of our own. So naturally, I have Totodile go undercover, dressing him up to fit the part. After returning, we then do some strange cult-like chanting towards the sky. And as strange as this all is, ultimately, this results in us obtaining the Eviolite. Since Totodile is a non-fully evolved Pokemon, this held item gives our starter a 50% increase in its defenses. Up until now, I've mostly been using Citrus Berries that give us a one-time recovery of 25% HP. So the Eviolite is a really solid upgrade for our team. We've also now got a few other new held items that we can rely on, giving us a little bit of a boost. And we were going to need every ounce of strength that we could possibly get, as now we had firmly entered the endgame. Ironically, this starts off with one of our best matchups in the entire game, Griselle. Out of her 5 Pokemon, 4 of them are weak against water, which gives Totodile free reign to completely dogwalk her entire team on our very first attempt. However, that is the final easy fight of the entire game, because basically, there are only 2 main fights left in Legends ZA. The first of those is Grisham, and his team is insane, featuring 6 Pokemon that are all fully evolved and all incredibly powerful, while we are left with only our one single Totodile. Our starter has overcome a lot during this challenge, but this is, by far, our toughest fight yet, and I was just hoping that we could somehow pull off a miracle. Grisham leads with a Pangoro that hits hard. However, since it knows Protect, I use our reliable strategy of Aqua Jet followed by Flip Turn to dodge the incoming attack before Liquidation picks up our first KO. Malamar comes in next, and this thing is really annoying. It uses Hypnosis right away, making Totodile drowsy. We're still able to take it down without incurring too much damage, but being drowsy will make Totodile's moves much slower to recharge. Regardless, against the incoming Pyroar, we do tank a Snarl, but an Aqua Jet and Liquidation still quickly get the KO. This is then followed up by Tyranitar. Its Stone Edge and Crunch hit Totodile hard, but thanks to our type advantage here, a Flip Turn followed by Liquidation are all we need to take down the Rock-type Pseudo. This leaves Grisham down to only his 2 dragons, Salamence and Mega Charizard. Surprisingly, the first of these is actually our easiest Pokemon to deal with on Grisham's roster. Salamence starts the fight by using Draco Meteor, and by timing an Aqua Jet just right, we can dodge the attack before landing a quite effective Ice Fang to deal with Salamence very quickly. All of a sudden, now Grisham was down to only his final Pokemon, Mega Charizard, making this a fair, even battle between 2 of the strongest starter Pokemon of all time. I'm able to land an Aqua Jet, but Grisham responds with Dragon Rush that slams Totodile, putting us at low health. We need to end this fight quickly, so I charge up one more Liquidation, but Charizard outspeeds, landing an Air Slash that finishes off our beloved Totodile. Despite making it through 5 of Grisham's Pokemon, Totodile just ran out of steam by the time we made it to Charizard. And while that fight felt close, Charizard is Grisham's most powerful Pokemon, and it was basically still at full health. While I was disappointed to have lost, having made it that far gave me confidence that it would be possible to find a way to win this fight. However, that confidence would not last long, because my attempts that followed were nowhere near as smooth. Most of the time, I couldn't even make it past Tyranitar. I must have gotten lucky on that first attempt because the combination of Hypnosis and Grisham's raw damage output was just destroying me. Very quickly, I suffered 4 more losses. On my best attempt, I was able to make it to Charizard again, but with Totodile at such low health that we just instantly die to a Dragon Rush. At this point, Totodile was just being beaten up, and it was clear that my current strategy just wasn't going to be enough to get us over the line. Although, I didn't really know how to improve our chances, so I started trying a bunch of different things, using moves like Protect, Outrage, and even Swords Dance, as well as trying different held items like the Mystic Water, just hoping that there would be some kind of miracle combination that would give us the win. But that miracle did not occur, as I would go on to lose again, and again. Totodile was just being repeatedly slapped into the dirt, and this just started to feel hopeless. Being able to only use 4 moves at one time was really taking its toll. Without Ice Fang, we don't have a good way of dealing with Salamence, and without Protect, we have no way to dodge Malamar's Hypnosis. And if we have both of those, then there's no room for Aqua Jet, Liquidation, and Flip Turn, which is our strongest damage dealing combination. This was just so frustrating because I felt like I was so close to figuring figuring this out. However, I had now racked up 17 losses just against Grisham alone. As these losses continued piling up, I was starting to lose faith. But on attempt 18, I would finally start to see a glimmer of hope. This time, I equipped Totodile with the Shell Bell. I didn't realize it at the time, but this item was going to be a game changer. With the Shell Bell, you recover a little bit of health every time you attack. And in a long, drawn-out fight like this one against Grisham, that recovery can really add up. Much to my surprise, on this attempt, after taking out Salamence, our Totodile still had a decent amount of health. Unfortunately, my moveset here was still pretty experimental, and we still weren't able to overcome Charizard. But we did survive longer than any of my previous attempts. And so, despite suffering our 18th loss against Grisham, now I had a new plan. After changing my moveset back to the version with Protect, with Totodile holding the Shell Bell, we once again stepped forward to face Grisham, ready to begin attempt 19. Against Pangoro, we do take more damage thanks to not having the Eviolite, but the Shell Bell does give us some nice recovery as Liquidation takes down the Panda. Then, against Malamar, I instantly use Protect to block the incoming Hypnosis as we just can't afford the slow move cooldown. After that, we trade hits as Shell Bell continues to keep us above half health by the time Malamar is finished by Aqua Jet. Pyroar hits the field next, but a super effective Liquidation quickly deals with it as Grisham then sends in his deadly Tyranitar. And this is where the Shell Bell really starts to prove its worth, as Tyranitar's Stone Edge puts Totodile on the brink of death. But once our Liquidation connects, we get a small chunk of health back while also finishing off the menacing Rock type. Then, against Salamence, our combination of Aqua Jet and Ice Fang still let us take down the dragon, giving us even more health back. So, once again, Grisham was down to only his Mega Charizard, the Pokemon who has ended every single close attempt I've had so far. This time though, Totodile quickly hits an Aqua Jet followed by a Liquidation that hits Charizard hard. But Grisham then responds with a Dragon Rush and Totodile just survives! With our starter on the brink of death, we quickly fire off one last Ice Fang, which is just enough to finish off Charizard, finally giving us the win against Grisham. It may have taken hours and 19 attempts, but we had finally clutched up, overcoming our hardest fight yet in a 6-on-1, as well as giving us a glorious promotion to rank A. With that, one single Totodile had somehow reached the top of the ZA Royale. I was so relieved to have finally defeated Grisham, but there's still one more trainer left for us to conquer in Legends ZA, and that trainer is Tawny. That night, a huge explosion goes off, and while I thought it was probably just Grisham raging after getting soloed by a Totodile, it turns out to be Prism Tower, radiating with mega energy. So naturally, Team MZ head down to investigate. Keegan, since both you and Tawny are rank A, you must have a battle to decide who is the strongest Mega Evolution user. Guys, my Totodile isn't even capable of Mega Evolving. I'm obviously not the strongest Mega user here, just let Tawny do it. Despite my plea, we're still forced into a battle against Tawny with her full team of 6 powerful Pokemon. While Grisham's team has the more traditionally powerful Pokemon, Tawny's roster is far more threatening for Totodile. Every single one of her Pokemon is dangerous. She has a Meowstic that knows Thunderbolt, a Goodra that knows Toxic, an Avalugg that is insanely bulky, an Emboar with Thunder Punch, Manectric with Thunder, and a Mega Meganium with Giga Drain. On top of that, last time we battled Tawny, we just got decimated by a single Giga Drain. So I knew that this fight would be on a whole other level from anything we've had to deal with during this challenge. As a result, it was clear that I needed to be at maximum power and went out to find the last few rare candies I needed before giving Totodile one final boost to level 100. Now, our starter is as strong as it could possibly get, and so it was now time to begin our final showdown with our rival, Tawny. She starts the fight with Meowstic, who instantly sets up Reflect. but with a quick combination of Aqua Jet, Liquidation, and Ice Fang, we can finish Meowstic before it gets the chance to Thunderbolt. Tawny then tries sending in Ivore. She goes for a Bulk Up, but Totodile shuts that down with a Liquidation, immediately getting the KO. Next in is the very deadly Manectric, but since it knows Protect, our Aqua Jet and Liquidation combo secure the KO before it gets the chance to Thunder. This forces Tawny to send in her Goodra. It immediately tries to Toxic, but Protect is able to block it. Goodra then tries to use Draco Meteor, but an Ice Fang, followed by a quick Aqua Jet, are able to finish off Goodra before Draco Meteor can connect. So, we had now gotten through Tawny's first 4 Pokemon without even taking a single hit. But that was about to change as Avalugg comes in next. This thing is so physically bulky, and I don't have a way of quickly dealing with it. As such, my only real option here is just to keep spamming attacks. So, Totodile and Avalugg trade hits. Thankfully, with the help of the Shell Bell, we're able to overpower Avalugg without losing too much health in the process. This brings Tawny down to her final Pokemon, which is also her most deadly, Mega Meganium. I instantly try to use Ice Fang, which deals big damage. However, we get hit by a Leech Seed in the process. Meganium then charges up a Giga Drain, which I mostly mitigate with Protect. While a Dazzling Gleam does bring us to low health, from here, once our last Ice Fang lands, Meganium is decimated. That gives us the win over Tawny, as well as our revenge for the earlier loss. Somehow, Totodile had actually conquered another 6v1, making me the strongest Mega Evolution user without ever actually Mega Evolving. There are still a handful of fights left in the endgame, but none of these are anywhere near as difficult as Grisham or Tawny. And largely thanks to our Shell Bell, as well as the move Whirlpool, Totodile is comfortably able to solo the final boss fight against the Rogue Orange, allowing us to save Lumiose City. As the credits begin to roll, despite all of our struggles during this challenge, we had somehow beaten all of Pokémon Legends ZA using only one single Totodile. Jump into this video next for more Pokemon content, and leave a like on the video to help make all of my suffering during this challenge worthwhile. Take care, and I'll see you in the next video.